Welcome back to the Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life, the podcast. You're listening to Author's Corner, where we highlight and showcase local authors. Today, I'm speaking to John Suzuki, author of American Grit. And John and I are going to be talking on the topic From Victims to Heroes in America's concentration camps. And this story is all about transforming your mind. So this is going to be a great conversation. Welcome, John.
Hi, Myrna. How are you?
I am doing great. Yes, yes. All right. So let me give you guys a brief summary of John's book. American Grit is a compelling narrative about racial identity, resilience, and heroism. In 2008, John Suzuki embarked on a poignant journey to Minidoka, one of the 10 former U.S. concentration camps authorized by President Franklin D. Roosevelt Executive Order 9066 after the bombing of Pearl Harbor, where tens of thousands of American men, women, and children were incarcerated solely because of their race. Here he encounters a remarkable testament of bravery, an honor roll listing the names of Japanese American men who volunteered from Minidoka to enlist and fight in the U.S. Army while their families remained imprisoned by the U.S. Army. Inspired by this unparalleled act of courage, Suzuki sets out to tell the story of Shiro, called Kishimo, a man who was incarcerated at Minidoka and later emerged as an American war hero in the 442nd Regimental Combat Team of the U.S. Army. Despite learning of Kash's death in 1997, the author remains undeterred and collaborating with Louis Kishimo, his beloved widow, weaves an unforgettable tale of courage, perseverance, and love during a dark chapter in American history.
I couldn't have said it better.
Yeah. Well, I took it right from your book summary.
That's it.
All right.
That's
Well, I
it.
want to start off with a very powerful question.
Yes.
How does American Grit speak to, which is one of the reasons I want to have you on the show. How does American Grit speak to people who have poor self-image and confidence, that are living in fear, that have a lack of purpose, that have no hope in the future, that have a lack of inspiration or a desire to do good, but don't know how, which is what your book seemed to encompass. Right?
Yeah. It is. Wow, that's a big question. That's
I
a
know,
big
right?
question because in today's world, there's a lot of that going around.
Yes.
And that's part of the reason why I wrote this book. It took me 15 years to write this book because I
Wow.
traveled all around the world. It was about World War II. But most importantly, first of all, a lot of people don't even know about the American concentration camps right here in America, where we threw in, 122,000 people,
Wow.
50,000 of which or of whom were children and babies. And it was all because if they look like the enemy, they must be the enemy. And there was just lots of fear on the West Coast of the Japanese attacking and invading the Western United States. Um, Understandably, there was a lot of concern, but the decisions that were made were really bad decisions. I mean, in terms of what they did. And so these poor people, they were evicted from their homes and businesses and farms, and they had to get rid of virtually everything. They could only take what they could carry with them, and they were thrown in one of 10 concentration camps in the deserts and swamps of America. And they were thrown in there because the country didn't trust them. And a lot of people didn't like them. And they just wanted to get rid of them, out of sight, out of mind. And so when you think about the psychology of these poor people, first of all, they had no idea what was going to happen to them, Myrna. The only frame of reference they had was the Holocaust going on in Nazi Germany. So they didn't know if they even had a future. And they didn't know where they were going. They didn't nothing. And nobody in authority could or would tell them about what was going to happen to them. So you talk about a frame of mind of really being a victim, because certainly they were. They were discarded, they were hated, they were reviled, they were not trusted. And so all of a sudden, I mean, you think about a situation where you have every reason to not have confidence in yourself or
Yeah.
confidence in your future. And they were surrounded by barbed wire fences in the deserts and swamps of America. And the temperatures were over 100 degrees, and in the winter times they were below freezing, and all they had was a shack made of pine lumber and tar paper. They didn't have plumbing. It was terrible. It was terrible. And so, but the lesson that, not only about the lesson of about this actually happening in this country, so gosh darn it, we got to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Mhm.
But there were people in these camps, all ranges of people. Some people did succumb to victimhood, and they did blame the United States government. But there were other people that made different choices on how to look at things. And some of the men in these camps made the choice of deciding that they didn't want their future to be in concentration camps, that they needed to figure out a way to prove their loyalty and patriotism to the United States so
Mm.
that they could get their families out of that crazy place. And so they decided that and one day the United States Army needed more soldiers, and it came to these concentration camps looking for volunteers to fight for the United States Army, which was the same army that put them and their families in those camps to begin with.
Wow.
And
I'm
men
I'm
like
getting the
Sheriff,
gist. Yes,
right?
I'm getting the gist of this,
I
right?
mean,
Mm.
who would volunteer? Who in the world would volunteer under those circumstances? Thousands of them did.
Mm.
And they went on to, just real quickly, they went on to fight for the United States in Europe, and they joined the 442nd Regimental Combat Team. And the 442nd became the most decorated war unit in the history of the United States for its
Mhm.
size and duration. And this was a bunch of Japanese American guys. It was a segregated war unit. So when we talk about uh, uh, transforming your mind,
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I honestly don't know of a greater
A
story
better story.
of
Wow.
going from less than nothing to emerging as American heroes. And there were also women in those camps that did similar things in terms of making the decisions that they were going to make a better life for themselves, and they found ways to do that. And they not only found ways to improve their own lives, but to make better lives for future generations of Americans. And it's just unbelievable. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah. I mean, that is amazing. So, they transformed their minds from victims and they became
Yes.
heroes.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
not like they transformed their mind from, victims and then by accident, they became heroes. They made a conscious choice. So what what
Yeah.
what is the process of doing that? Did you figure out how they is it just because they wanted to prove to America that they weren't the enemy, or they were proving something to themselves?
Yeah, the realization that these men came to, and a lot of women who, back then they didn't draft women into the army. Some women volunteered,
Mhm.
but they looked at their they looked at their circumstances, and their choice was that they could blame people. They can blame people. They could blame the government. They could blame their circumstances. And one of the men that I spoke to, he says, if we blame leads to victimhood,
Right,
and the opposite of victimhood is self-empowerment,
right,
and taking charge and going, what, I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm not going to keep doing this. The
right.
old saying, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over
Same
and
thing
over
over and
again and
over.
expecting
Right.
a different result. And they and so they looked for ways. They tried to figure out ways, and the big way that came along was volunteering for the United States Army. But and a lot of times I've learned that well, first of all, let's talk about choice here real quick. I
Mhm.
am a big advocate that our life, the product of our life today is a product of the choices that we've made in our lives. And a lot of people have a problem with that because, they say, well, I couldn't choose my parents and I couldn't, all that kind of stuff. But, and I ask them, I say, well, you know what? Um, do you agree with the statement? The life that you end up with in the future will be the product of the choices and decisions that you make today.
Of course.
That's what people
100%.
say. That's exactly what people say, right? And so,
100%.
yeah,
Some people want to temper that by, well, unless this happens, but it's 100%.
exactly.
Yeah.
And and I get it. I get it. Different people live in different circumstances and different environments. Some
Right.
people have it harder than others. I get
Right.
that,
Right.
right? But but part of the message in this book is
Mhm.
tell me that your life was worse than these guys.
Yeah, I know. I know.
Tell me that where you are right now is worse than where these guys started.
And the
And
sad
yeah,
part, you said they were, Japanese American, which means they were born here.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's the other thing is that these people were 60 2/3 of them were American citizens,
Yeah, that's
you know?
basically what I'm thinking. That's
Yeah.
that's terrible. Well,
Yeah.
they can't do stuff like that today.
Well, hold that thought. Hold that thought, because
They can't.
this is another reason why I want to get this out. It not only can it, I believe that it will happen again.
Mm,
Because all it took was a really bad and misguided decision by a person called the President of the United States, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And if
right.
you think back on 9/11, okay, there were calls to round up Muslims and
Yeah, I know.
put them into camps because somebody came up with the idea that all Muslims were terrorists.
Yeah.
What's
Yeah.
interesting about that is there was a United States congressman at the time. His name was Norman Mineta, and he worked for Bush Jr. George W. Bush told his cabinet and all his advisors, whatever solution you come up with, do not come to me with a solution that Norman Mineta had lived through. Norman Mineta, when he was 10 years old, he was thrown into a concentration camp.
Oh, wow.
And so George W. said, don't come to me with a
With
solution
this,
like
with
that.
that kind of
Right.
thing. Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
but if there's that energy and if there's that public fear and if there's
Yeah.
all the perfect storm that happens,
Yeah.
during COVID, people were talking about rounding up Chinese. Are you kidding me?
That's
Right?
true. That's
And
true. It happens all the time.
and
Yes.
we're talking
Yes.
about American citizens, and
Yes.
and just that kind of chaos and just fear that happens.
Fear
And
is fear
so,
is a big energy. It
yeah,
can
and
move things. Yes.
yeah, and
Yes.
part of what we're dealing with today is we're dealing with a political environment that really isn't helping anybody. And
No.
so one of the things I want to do, and I know you're doing, Myrna, which is just amazing, is, helping people and making this world better is going to happen from the bottom up. It's going to happen from people like you and me, getting the word out, educating folks, inspiring people, helping people live better lives. And I love it. I love what you do. I love this
Thank
show.
you.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's wonderful, and that's how it's going to happen, one person at a time, helping
Yeah.
others.
Well, kudos to you as well. You've got a podcast that's called Finding Better.
I
Same thing.
do, I do, yeah, yeah, and
So
it's
you're trying to make a change one person at a time
one
as
person at
well.
a time. That's
Yes.
right.
Mhm.
That's right. I one of my favorite stories, in fact, the story that's kind of the basis of my whole podcast, was a story of an old man who was walking along a beach one morning. And the night before, there was this huge storm that had washed up a whole bunch of starfish.
I
And
know
as
that
this,
one.
you know this one? Yeah, can I
Keep
tell
going.
your
Yeah,
audience?
I know
Okay,
that
good.
one. Yes.
And out in the distance, this old man sees this little boy and he's picking up starfish and he's throwing them back into the ocean. And he walks up to the little boy and he says, "What you doing?" And the little boy says, "I'm throwing starfish back in the ocean." And he says, "There must be thousands of starfish on this beach. You can't possibly make a difference." And the little boy thinks about it. He looks down, picks up a starfish, throws it back in the water, and he says, "I made a difference to that one."
This one. Yes, yes,
And so,
yes.
Myrna,
Yes.
I love what you're doing because, if we make a difference in the life of one
One
person, we just
person.
lifted the world. And if that
Yes.
one person lifts the life of somebody else, then we've created something pretty
Yeah.
cool. Yeah,
Yeah. And you know what? It all starts with the mind. It's a powerful
it
thing.
does. It
Everything that
does.
you want to do in this world, whether you're miserable, whether you're happy, whether
Exactly.
you're everything starts with the mind. And you know, I'm not sure how I came up with the topic or the name for
It's
my show,
wonderful.
but I love it. Every single day, I am learning about the mind and about
Yeah.
mindset.
Yeah.
Even my pastor just preached something on the Sunday about the mindset, and I learned some new things about
Absolutely.
mindset because
Absolutely.
it's big. It's a big topic,
It's
and which
huge.
is where I wanted to which is why I wanted to talk to you. It wasn't
Well,
about
thank you.
concentration camps, and it wasn't about the war. It was about the mindset of transforming a bad situation and making it good, and it's by choice, right? You
That's
said
right.
they
It is
volunteered.
by
They
choice.
didn't make them do it. They volunteered, which was a
That's
good
right.
thing. They give them a choice, right?
And yeah, and you know what, when I talk about choice, I just want to make sure folks understand. I'm not please know that I'm not saying that if you're not living the life you live, you're a loser. I'm not, or that you want to live, you're a loser. I'm not saying that. What I'm wanting to do and what I'm trying to do is to inspire people and empower them. Because, when you understand and you realize, and sometimes it takes a long time. My daughter, she was afflicted with an eating disorder, and
Mhm.
it took her years to
Okay.
come to me and finally say, "Dad, you know what? You're right. The eating disorder isn't my choice, but how I respond to it is.
Yes, of
And
course.
what I do with my life moving forward is," and it took her years to come to that realization. And so the idea of my telling your listeners that it's your choice, your life is your choice. I it's an it I want it's for me, it was one of the most empowering decisions of my life, and my most empowering realizations of my life, when I realized that when I was working for IBM and I was working for a boss that was telling me to lie to my customers, and I was
Mhm.
absolutely miserable, and I had two small children and I had a big mortgage, and I had no choice. I was stuck in that job. And um, I have never forgotten the moment when I was driving down the road, looking at multi-million dollar houses up on a ridge, saying, "How in the world does anybody get there?" And I realized that the handcuffs that I put on myself,
Yeah.
and I put those
Yeah.
handcuffs on me by choice.
Choice.
And it was my decision to be miserable. It was my decision to be
And you know
living the
why?
life I was living.
Because you wanted to get one of those multi-million dollar houses on the ridge, and you made that choice.
That was one of the motivations. And so, yes, there is motivation involved for sure, right? But, and from
Yeah.
that, 2 weeks later, I left IBM. I left IBM, and I said, "You know what? I'm not doing this anymore." And I chose to change my life.
And you
And it
look
was
happy.
yeah, yeah. Well, that was
You're
that
just beaming. So
yeah.
obviously you didn't lose anything.
Yeah,
Right.
and
Wow.
it's choices, and
Yes. Yeah.
I want it to be an empowering message for folks to
Okay.
think about it, and and hopefully come to the realization that, you know what, yes, it is my choice, because your life is totally different from that moment on.
Yes.
It really is cool. It really is cool. And so my book is hopefully to inspire folks that,
Yeah.
that as they change their life in their concentration camp, not only did they change their life for themselves, they changed their life for the country and the world. Um,
Mhm.
and and the world changed and generations followed.
That's
So
beautiful.
so it's big.
It's
It's
true. We
it's
all
it's
make an
big.
impact.
Every
Even
one of
talking about
us.
that starfish, that one
Yes.
starfish that got back. I don't know, but starfish, maybe that wasn't a good analogy. But the one person that escaped can, help a
Yeah,
whole bunch of people. I don't know what the
exactly.
starfish can do, but it's the
Well,
concept
yeah,
of it, right?
yeah, exactly. It's the analogy of you
Yes.
say he saved made
You
a
save
difference to
one,
that
and that
starfish.
person saves,
Yeah,
look what Gandhi,
exactly.
Gandhi did, right? A whole country, just one person.
Exactly.
Right,
Exactly.
right. So,
Exactly. So
um,
yeah,
uh,
everyone makes a difference.
everyone makes a difference. Yeah. So, if I were to ask you, what's the main message you want folks to take away from your book? Is it something we've already covered? Is it the
Yeah,
choice?
yeah,
Is
it's
it, or is there
choices.
something else?
It's choices.
It's
It's choices.
choices.
And
Okay.
don't look at choices as being a bad thing or something that I'm like I said, like I'm critical of.
Mhm.
Think of choices as being the most empowering thing you can have in your life. And we have, we're coming up to the 4th of July, right? And we
Right.
live in a country where there's nothing you can't short of being illegal, right? But there's
Right.
nothing you can't choose to do.
Yes.
So it's
It
really
is.
cool.
It
It's
is the
really
land
cool.
where dreams are made.
It
Yes.
is. It
Yes.
is.
Yes.
So
So, okay.
that's my message. That's
That's
my
your
message.
message.
And you know what?
Yeah.
So the message is choose.
Mhm.
And if you screw up with that choice, choose again,
Yes,
right?
again.
Just,
Yes.
there is no such thing as failure. I say failure is just a stepping stone to success.
Of
And
course.
and just go for it. Go for it.
Yes. 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 Well, all, Edison and Elon Musk and
Yes.
all the top
Yes.
people that we aspire to become, they all had
That's
failure.
right.
And you're right, there's
They
no
all
such
had
thing as
failure.
failure. It's just learning
Yep.
learning what not to do.
Yeah.
Right.
And
So,
you know what else all successful people have? Is they have people who are telling them that they can't be successful.
right,
I mean, the greater success you're looking for, the more detractors you're going to have in your life. So
right,
just understand that, right? Decisions come with hard work.
right.
And hard work is not a good thing. It's a gift. And so, Myrna, I often tell people it seems like the harder I work, the luckier I get. And there's a reason for that, because the harder you work, the more you learn. The more you learn, the more valuable it becomes. The more valuable you become, the more opportunities come. So there's a
Yes,
whole logic tree
yes, it is.
that
And it
follows that
also has to
logic,
do
right?
with that given energy. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Because if
Yeah,
you're working hard,
exactly.
you're giving to somebody, right?
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
and
That's
it comes
exactly
back
right.
to you. It's all that flowing of things.
Oh
Right.
my
So
gosh,
listen,
we could go on for we can go on for days, you and me talking
talking about that,
about
yeah.
yeah. It's
Yeah. But I want
wonderful.
to
It's
touch on the
wonderful.
wife though, because you started off by saying that you learned a lot from her. You want to touch
Yeah.
on her briefly?
Yes.
What
Yes.
does she bring to the conversation?
So Louise Cascino, when World War II happened, they met in the camp, and uh, she also made the decision within the camp that she was going to find a way to make her life better. And so, kind of that switch again of making that choice and going from victim to champion of her own life. And sure enough, there came a point in time during the war that the FBI approved people to be let out of the camps if they were sponsored by somebody in the Midwest or the East Coast. They couldn't go back to the West Coast. And so she found a way to get sponsored by a Quaker company or a Quaker family who brought her to Chicago, where she went. And this is during World War II. She found a way out of there. And she went to legal secretary school because she decided she didn't want to be a crop harvester,
Hmm.
which she experienced in the camps. And and she went on when Shiro, her husband, or her not her husband at the time, but the man who became her husband, survived the war. He got blown up and shot 6 times, and he survived the war, came back, and they became champions for their own lives. They became champions for the Japanese American communities. She became a civil rights, a giant in civil rights, in the idea of never to let this happen again. And it's largely in honor of her and her husband that I wrote this book. And so, I mean, everybody life's not fair, and nobody's life is easy. I don't care nobody's life is easy. People may think other people's lives they're not, right? But everybody has a choice. And she went on to help thousands of people. And they raised an amazing family, and just totally inspiring. And they say behind every great man is an even greater woman.
It's true. It's true.
It is true. It is true.
Yeah.
I know this after 38 years of marriage, but for sure. Well, I learned that in the first month. But anyway, yeah. And so her story is also an amazing story.
Is a book, right?
Yeah.
But I like it because she made the decision to get out of that camp by, we would say, hook, line, and sinker. You find a way. There is a way, right?
Exactly.
Yes,
and
it started a way.
And
right?
it started with that one moment.
Yes.
It started with that one moment of deciding she was not going to blame people for her circumstances. She was not. She made that decision that she was not going to be a victim, and that she was going to, and that choice opened. If she didn't make that choice, she wouldn't have found that opportunity.
Exactly. The universe opens up. Right. You have a vision. Really, the universe conspires to help you find it. You're right. You got to start by having a clear goal. Just had an interview. My interview that's coming out next week. Let's basically guys see a clearly divine goal, and then you work towards it.
Yeah, that's right. And somehow the heavens open up, and providence happens. It's just it just happens. That you can call it the universe. You can call it God, whatever. Right? It does happen, and it is real. Yeah,
that's beautiful. Okay, well, listen. Yes, I like where I started off about. Your book is about racial identity, resilience, heroism, choices, mindset, all the great things that goes with an inspirational story.
And I think it applies to a lot of our world today. Yes, it really does. And and the bottom line to it is that it's all about love. It's all about we live in so much fear and hate. We all need to bring a little more love into the world. And thank you, Myrna. Thank you for doing your part.
The most transformative energy, love.
It really is.
It is the most transformative energy. So well, thank you, John, for being on the show and sharing your work and inspiration. Listen, guys, if you were, I don't know, there's so many immigrants in this country, including me.
We're all, we're all immigrants. We're all immigrants.
You're right. We're all immigrants. You're right. Understand the mindset of an immigrant. Understand that we're here to find a better life, and understand that a lot of times, we're discriminated against, but you don't sit down and just accept it and place blame and say, well, I can't get anywhere because I'm immigrant. I can't get anywhere because of my color or my race. You're listening to John's, or you go and pick up a copy of John's book and understand that you can get somewhere just by changing your mindset, transforming your mind. And this is what this show is all about.
It is. Hey, can I make a quick announcement, Myrna? You are the first person that's hearing this. That's hot off the press. Okay, so I'm coming out with my second edition of American Grit. And the thing is that on August 1st, I'm going to offer the PDF copy of my book for free on my website. So you won't even have the entire book. You won't even have to go to Amazon and buy it. And my website is johnsuzuki.com. And so on August 1st, which is 1 month from now, you'll be able to go there and download a free copy of it, and let your friends know and let them download. Tell them to go there, because this is a story that I just want out there. I just want out there. I could care less about book sales. I just want the story out there.
That's beautiful. Yes. The sign of someone that wants to change the world and make the world a better place.
Just make it
So
better. Yeah.
yes, I salute you. So yeah, so all right. So you give me a copy, your website,
Okay.
johnsuzuki.com.
Yep.
I will link out to your book in the show notes from my show page, which is myhelps.us. There'll also be a transcript of my conversation with John. But yeah, listen, support him, pick up a copy of his book. He's offering a free PDF, so there's no reason not to,
That's
because
right.
he wants to inspire you. He wants to talk to
Yep.
you about the choices that you make, let you know that life is hard, and the way around it, above it, below it, is by making different choices, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I teach. That's what I preach. And
Yeah.
as a coach, they always say it's not what happens to you, but your response to what happens to you that makes
That's
a
right.
difference.
That's
That's
exactly right.
basically
That's
what
exactly
he's
right.
talking about here in a nutshell. If you were to put a bumper sticker on it, yeah, these people were thrown into a concentration camp because of their race, and they decided that how they were going to respond to it, and they
Yep.
respond to it, and like he said, it made a big difference for their downline,
And
generational.
frankly, it
increase.
made a difference to all of us.
Right.
They made a
Yes.
difference to all of us, and
Right.
in a lot of ways nobody will ever know.
And exactly right. You
Yeah.
can't touch it, you can't feel it, but
Yeah.
you can't touch it, but it's there. It's
Yeah.
intangible.
Yeah.
Right. So I enjoyed our conversation, John. Thank you very much for being on the show and
Thank
sharing
you,
your work with
Myrna.
us. And I'm
Thank you.
proud to be able to highlight and showcase your work to my audience, and help us to be inspired. And I was inspired myself too by our conversation.
Wonderful.
So
Thank you.
your book is available on Amazon, and as well as on your website. Do you want to leave a social media handle?
A social media handle. Wow. I'm a hack at this stuff. Can you tell? My YouTube channel is Finding Better Podcast.
Okay.
And I'm on Apple, I'm on Spotify, I'm on all the major podcast platforms. And, come by and check it out. What we do, much like you do, Myrna, is we are sharing experiences. And it's all about experiences and finding better, because of the best way to experience success is to copy it.
Yeah. Yes.
and
It's true.
That's what we're doing.
Success leave clues. I mean, I
Yeah,
can go on with the
exactly.
bumper stickers forever.
That's it. Yeah. So finding better.
It leaves
Yep.
clues, and that's why you read books, and that's where you learn from
That's right.
stories. It's
That's
the
right.
most
And listen to your
transformative way to
podcast.
learn.
That's
Right.
right.
And listen to podcasts, right? Well, podcast is about people coming on telling stories. So it's what it's
Yeah,
about.
that's
That's why
it.
it's taken off, right? So
Right.
awesome. All right. Well, I enjoyed our conversation. Thank you, John, for being on the show. Thank you guys for tuning in to this week's episode of Author's Corner. We're highlighting and showcasing American Grit. John's website is johnsuzuki.com. August the 1st, he says he's going to be sharing free PDFs from the book. So if you want to be inspired, you want to learn some history, and learn the mindset of empowerment and not being a victim, definitely take him up on his offer. I'm definitely going to download a copy myself. So thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate the
Thank
offer.
you, Myrna.
Yeah,
thank you, everybody.
You're very welcome. All right. Well, listen, thanks again for tuning in. Until next time, namaste.
Thank you.